Welcome to another episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I am your host, Ronnie Harder, and today I am joined by my two gracious co-hosts, Contown and Matt. Contown, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. Ready to hit the road. I'm heading to Madison tomorrow. So
Yeah,
beautiful week. It looks like maybe a little rain in the forecast, but looking forward to the trip. First time out there.
Is it still all day, or is it going to be like scattered throughout the day?
It looks on and off. It looks like light rain here and there.
Gotcha.
Like not more than 50% chance.
Yeah. Won't impact the game too much, hopefully. So
yeah,
that's all that matters. Matt, how are you?
Doing good. Excited for a huge week of college football.
Yeah, not just Michigan. It's going to be a whole bunch of different games. Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss. Really good games on. Today we have a very special guest, our first guest as a part of this podcast. Everyone knows him, Scott Bell, legendary Michigan fan on Twitter. Scott, how are you?
Good. Similarly excited for this weekend, both from a Michigan and just a college football perspective, but happy to join y'all and excited to finally get to the meat of the Michigan schedule, where it seemed like September was just a waiting point to get to this weekend anyways, and now we're finally here.
Any nerves heading into this game, or are you feeling confident?
I don't think you can be confident with and not even just from a Rutgers second half standpoint, but just, I mean, it's a tough road game. I think Michigan's 0-12 as road underdogs under Harbaugh. They haven't won in Madison in 20 years. I've been there for two of those games, and they weren't particularly fun for Michigan fans. But I mean, Wisconsin's a very flawed team too. But I'm definitely not at the point where I can feel, quote unquote, like fully confident heading into a game like this, even with all of Wisconsin's warts.
100%. Before we get into this, I wanted to kind of dive into Scott Bell, like the person. What, what, I know, put you on the spot right here. How did you become a Michigan fan? Are you from Michigan? I know you graduated from there, but did you grow up as a Michigan fan?
It's really weird. I grew up in Michigan, lived in Michigan my whole life until after college when I moved down to Texas, but I actually grew up in a family that was Michigan State fans, which I know people who follow me on Twitter probably think that's weird. But my family, there's not really a point where people really understood when it happened. But like, even when I was like a kid, like elementary school aged, like I was all about Michigan, even though my parents were about Michigan State. So as I got older and like wanted to like go to colleges and stuff, obviously Michigan appealed to me even more, but just always really liked Michigan. And then obviously once I started going to school there, that fandom and connection and to the school and all that stuff sort of just multiplied and increased, and still very prideful Michigan grad and all that good stuff. So there's not a great origin story about being bitten by a Michigan spider or anything like that, but always just really been into Michigan, and I foresee that continuing for the next 50 or so years.
Yeah, I think if you were to tell us that Scott Bell grew up in a Spartan family, we would have never believed you for all the jokes that you crack on the Spartans.
Yeah, weird stuff. But I get the last laugh because my Michigan State Spartan fan parents ended up helping pay for my tuition to Michigan. So they have flipped over to they cheer for Michigan now.
Perfect.
I grew up in a rural place that was very Michigan State heavy, but I'm the first person in my family to go to college and all that good stuff. So once there was a Bell connection to Michigan, they have flipped over. So I still talk to him at Christmas and all that good stuff.
Where in Michigan did you grow up, Scott?
It's a small town called Fremont. It's about an hour out of like Grand Rapids. It's in the West Michigan area. So
north or?
Yeah, it's kind of in between. It's not as far north as like your Ludington type area, but sort of near Grand Rapids, Muskegon-ish area.
Yeah.
About 3.5, 4 hours out of Ann Arbor.
Okay. Yeah. One of my best friends lives in Sparta now. I don't know if that's close to where you grew up, but yeah. Nice area there. A lot of apple orchards.
A lot of apple orchards. That's where we played our regional regional soccer tournament when I was a senior. So
Cool.
always drove through Sparta on the way to Grand Rapids.
Yep. Very cool.
Did you play soccer in college?
Not in college, no.
No.
Just soccer and tennis in high school. But that was the extent of my athletic career outside of the annual Michigan Daily State News touch football game in college.
Nice. Now, who was that one player growing up that you just really looked up to, or was your favorite player?
It's cliche, but right in my cognitive years, it was right in with the '97 team and Charles Woodson. So that was a great sweet spot. And then when I was in college, I was in the same incoming class as like Mike Hart and Chad Henne and stuff. So obviously, as you know, my history with Michigan State, I was loving the Mike Hart, getting to see the Mike Hart little brother comment stuff sort of unfold before my eyes when I was covering that team for the Michigan Daily. So been a big Mike Hart guy my whole life too.
So that puts you at U of M right about the same time as Isaiah Hole, who I'm sure you're familiar with. Did you know him at Michigan?
Did not know him till post Michigan, but big fan of Isaiah. Definitely one of the good guys covering the team. And I've
100%.
gotten to know him a lot better in recent years.
Yeah, I kind of miss Isaiah not being on. I read some of his stuff, but not nearly as much as when he was on 24/7.
Yep.
And hearing him on the podcast with Steve back in the day, that was always a must listen. So kind of miss that interaction, but still read his stuff. He's a good dude. Seems like a good dude.
Yep, Isaiah's good. Steve's a good guy too. Steve's a West Michigan guy. He went to grew up in Muskegon, went to Reese Puffer right around the time I did too. So Michigan fans are very lucky. They've got a lot of talented people covering them, but there's a lot of people that are just genuinely really, really good guys too. So glad to sort of be a part of that crew.
Yeah, Michigan fans are spoiled. I mean, Sam Webb, Steve Lorenz, you, Scott, you're a gem in Michigan Twitter and just in general. So it's great to have you on here. But let's go ahead and dive into this Wisconsin preview. And, we were talking about those Wisconsin struggles that have been going on this year. And I was just looking at the stats earlier. Graham Mertz is 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions this year, which I didn't realize it was that bad. Threw 4 interceptions against Notre Dame. Scott, kind of talk about what you're going to be looking for in Michigan's pass defense against Graham Mertz and that Wisconsin offense.
Yeah, I think it starts with getting pressure on him up front. He does not respond well to pressure. Obviously, people are going to be looking at the fourth quarter of the Notre Dame game, and I think that's a little bit of a he does not have good numbers this year whatsoever. But it is sort of piling on based on just how out of hand the last 15 minutes of that game went. But when you look at how well when Mertz has been successful, which has not been very, very recently, but his big game against, I think it was Illinois to start last year, where he was basically perfect, had 5 touchdowns and all that good stuff. It's when he's got time to sort of sit back and pick people apart. And when opposing defenses have gotten pressure on him, he's super rattled. He's not hitting open guys and checkdowns, and he definitely has a tendency of locking into one receiver. So you get pressure on him, you don't give him an opportunity to sort of hit ear progressions, find someone else, and he's definitely someone that is prone to giving up big plays to the other team. And I think that's going to be really big in a game like the Michigan-Wisconsin game, which I see being really, really low scoring, and a game that can really be flipped by a mistake or a big turnover by one of these offenses.
Yeah, I think Scott said it really well. If I could compare and contrast between Mertz and Cade, I think some Michigan fans have been disappointed with Cade at moments. I hope all Michigan fans could admit that at times he's been pretty good. But to compare and contrast, last week we talked about Cade maybe throwing to spots sometimes that he anticipated to be there before the snap. But if it's not there, the ball ends up either on the ground or a check down. And it might get to the check down late, but it gets to the check down. Mertz will force the ball to the first option if it's not there, even if the play develops and he sees the option not being there, sees it in double coverage, he will still throw it to the first option. So, Scott said it, you got to get pressure on Mertz. You got to get them in the obvious passing downs if you're Michigan, because one thing we've seen from Michigan's defense this year is the base package interior defensive line is not providing a ton of organic pass rush. So it's going to be big for Michigan to get them in 3rd and 5+, 3rd and 6+, so that we can get the guys like Taylor Upshaw or Mike Morris on the field and some of those kind of NASCAR packages, and get a pass rush with 4 or 5 so that we can give Mertz bad options in the passing game. From the rest of their offense perspective, I think the other big storyline with Wisconsin is, the offensive line is not as dominant of run blocking unit as they have been in previous years. It's a good offensive line. It's a good run blocking unit, but I think that has also contributed to their offensive struggles. Is you can't pair a decent offensive line with poor quarterback play. Wisconsin can get away with having unremarkable quarterback play when they've got great O-lines, but I think this one's just kind of decent.
Yeah, I thought I was on Graham Mertz. I mean, I think a lot of fans nationwide thought, this is finally a quarterback that Wisconsin needed, to kind of take that next step and rely more on the passing game than they have. They brought all their receivers back. It doesn't seem like any of those guys have gotten better. I don't know if that's a function more of Mertz or if that's just who they are. I do think their offensive line is fine. I agree with Contown that it's probably not as good. I think the biggest difference, and last year they did run on Michigan quite a bit, but last year defensively Michigan couldn't stop much of anything. But I think the big difference for Wisconsin in the last couple of years has been the lack of a stud at running back. We're just so used to Jonathan Taylor. You go back to Melvin Gordon,
Monty Ball, and
James White. Yeah, all these guys, like, they've got a laundry list. All the way back to Ron Dane, and probably before that. But that seems to be their identity, is just one monster running back, and they don't appear to have that. Jalen Berger was good last year, but he's lost a lot of snaps to the Clemson transfer. Malusi, yeah. And neither one of them, being third string at Clemson isn't necessarily a bad thing, but he still was third string at Clemson. So I don't think either one of them is really that much of a star. I think it'll be, I think Wisconsin will have a similar game plan on defense, but I think it'll be important for Michigan to, on early downs, like Contown said, stop the run, get them in uncomfortable situations so we can get the nickel package out there. And I think they should have better success doing that. But under Harbaugh playing on the road, you just never – it seems like you can't necessarily count on anything.
Yeah, I would like to see them be a lot more aggressive on defense. I think last week they were really soft in their coverages. They weren't playing too much man-to-man, if any at all. I would like to see a lot more in the box, just stack the box up against Wisconsin because they're a run-first team, obviously. They don't have the greatest offensive line. It's definitely not the offensive line of years past for Wisconsin. So it'll be interesting to see how much pressure that they bring, as well as if they're going to be playing man-to-man against these receivers that aren't too talented. I think Michigan has the athletes on the outside, in the secondary to be able to match up with these Wisconsin receivers really well. I think one matchup I am looking forward to seeing is Jake Ferguson, the tight end, seeing who covers him. It'll probably be Hawkins, just like it was against Washington with Cade Otton. They did a really good job against Cade Otton until it got to garbage time and Dylan Moore started throwing for a bunch of passing yards because they got really soft in their coverages. But it'll be interesting to see how they cover Jake Ferguson. I think that's their best pass catcher of everybody that they've got catching the ball. So it'll be really interesting to see on that end. And, as I was talking about them playing softer coverages against Rutgers last week, which it's mind-boggling to me. Would have liked to see them play more man-to-man. Noah Fadral is not a quarterback that I think you should be afraid of tearing you apart in the air. Scott, kind of talk about like Michigan's defense and what they should be doing against Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think I agree with you saying kind of get in the box. They're going to be a run first team, and I don't think you need to play with as large of a cushion as they did against Rutgers in the second half. I kind of get what the philosophy was there by Michigan. I just think they kind of overdid it. When you have the 3 touchdown lead, I'm cool with you taking it back a little bit and making sure everything stays in front of you, hitting them, making them earn points and kill clock as it goes. But I don't want Michigan sort of doing that to set the tone against Wisconsin, because if you're I think it's important to stop that running game. And even though the running game hasn't been the normal Wisconsin running game of the past, it's still going to be their identity. And especially with the way Mertz has been struggling, I don't think Wisconsin's key to victory is going to be through passing. But less of a cushion, kind of getting on there, packing that box. And I think that's a good way to start for Michigan.
Yeah, fully agree. I would love to see 8 in the box. I don't know if we'll do it, but kind of come out and set the tone early. I think road games especially, and especially any game against a good opponent, but especially on the road, it's, the first quarter is going to dictate a lot. We saw, I think it was 2019 when we went to Happy Valley and played Penn State, right? Michigan came out horribly. Took a delay of game call in the first snap and, kind of got blown out of the water in the first quarter. Michigan won the final 3 quarters of that game. But on the road, I think, the tone is set early, and the team that can come out and punch the other in the mouth first sets themselves up for success the most. So I'd like to see Michigan come out pretty aggressive against the run early. And Mertz beats you on a deep pass in the first quarter, you tip your hat. But I would like to see heavy boxes, more of the base stuff, the base 3-4, or even something exotic that we haven't seen yet. Something we actually showed against Rutgers was more of like a 4-3 look. It was actually kind of somewhat of like the mint front that Georgia looks, where it's a 4-man front, but you've got the open end standing up. It was Hutchinson, obviously, for us. Yeah. So something that maybe we've shown just a little of, a heavier set, or something we haven't shown at all. But I think against Rutgers, I was encouraged by the D-line play, especially Hinton. So, even the base 3-4 stuff and just, playing it heavier. You maybe play more of Morris and Hutch at the same time, and then try to get into the passing downs like we mentioned already, and get the subs in. We mentioned that Wisconsin's athletes on the outside don't really scare me. All the receivers we've known for 3-4 years now. Seems like Kendrick Pryor and Danny Davis have been there forever. You guys may have heard that Jake Ferguson's related to Barry Alvarez. He's mentioned that about 8 times a broadcast. But the one receiver I don't know a ton about is DK. I think, am I saying his name correctly? I'm not sure of his game, so I don't know exactly who the matchup on him would be best for Michigan. But Michigan's got the athletes to run with those guys, so I'd like to see more man, like everyone's already mentioned, less of the soft coverage like we saw against Rutgers, and dare Mertz to beat you, and if he does, you tip your cap.
Yeah, you talked about coming out aggressive, especially on the road against a team like Wisconsin. Matt, talk about Michigan's offense and what Cade needs to do. We know Wisconsin's run defense is top notch, probably the best in college football right now. So we're going to need Cade to play a really good game in the air. So talk about what you're looking for from Cade as opposed to what we saw in the second half against Rutgers last week.
Yeah, I think, it's been talked about throughout Michigan media, and we've mentioned even in the preseason, big improvement for this passing offense would be hitting open guys. He really struggled in the second half. It's been mulled over all week, but we've schemed some guys open throughout the season. Not a ton of attempts. He's going to have more attempts Saturday probably than he's had all year, unless it's pouring down rain. Michigan is going to struggle to run the ball. I mean, this is a talented run defense, and they're going to load up. Why wouldn't you? I mean, at this point, if you stop the run game, make Michigan show their counter. I don't know necessarily, the hot topic everyone goes to is the RPOs. I don't know that necessarily will be what the formula is this weekend. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a quick passing game, getting some mismatches. I like their safeties. I don't love their safeties. As we talked about preseason, I've been very high on Wisconsin, so it shows what I know. But they bring back so much on defense, and they're kind of all known commodities. I would like to attack the safeties a little bit, especially with All. I think we're underutilizing Eric All quite a bit. I think he's a big mismatch. Got to get AJ Henning some touches, whether that's through the air or on the ground, and really try to stretch Wisconsin horizontally in both the run and the pass game. I don't think we're going to be able to go right into the teeth of that defense. Cade just has to get back to what he was in the first half. Confident, hit the open guy, be in rhythm. May see more play action than we typically do. We haven't done a ton of that with Gaddis just in general, but may see that because they're going to be geared up to stop the run. So, just find the open guy and be accurate with the ball. The accuracy is the big key. We don't have to take a bunch of big shots, just hit the open guys when we need to throw the ball. And I think they're going to try to get them in a rhythm early.
Yeah, first half Cade against Rutgers last week, that's going to take us to the playoffs if we get that Cade for the rest of the year. But unfortunately, we just can't get a consistent game out of Cade. We saw that against Washington, although we didn't need him against Washington. But last week against Rutgers, it was mystifying what the hell happened between the first half and the second half with Cade. I would like to see them attack the edges a lot more, especially in the run game, because running up the middle against that nose tackle, is it Benton? Is it Keanu Benton? Is that his name? Yeah, he's a stud. Plugs a run up really well up the middle. They're just not going to get anything through the middle, so they're going to attack the edges against those defensive ends. Opposite of probably where Leo Chanel is going to be at, because I think Leo Chanel's a stud at linebacker and super athletic, super fast, can tackle, he can do it all. He's going to end up playing on Sunday. So I think it'll be really important for them to, like you said, Matt, go horizontal on offense and just try and out athletic, I guess if that's a term, Wisconsin, because Wisconsin doesn't have the fastest guys, but they have a lot of technically sound guys. Obviously, they have a great defense coordinator and Jim Leonard, who's just going to have he's going to have those guys ready on Saturday against Michigan's run game. Scott, let's go back to you. Michigan's run game, it was great the first 3 games, 300 rushing yards every single game. Then last week against Rutgers, wasn't it less than 100 or close to it, right?
Right around
less
there,
than 100. Yeah. What are we expecting from Michigan's run game? Like, are we expecting anything against Wisconsin's run defense that's so good?
I think there's still the talent to well, I think it's important to still have some sort of rushing component to it. You can't be completely predictable. You're not going to win when Cade McNamara is throwing 55 passes, but you're also knowing that you're going to have to run. Don't run just out of obligation either. Don't run Hassan Haskins up the middle for 2 yards in this sort of a matchup. I think there are ways that you can effectively run. No, you're not going to have 200. Hell, you're not going to have 150 yards. Like Wisconsin's given up, I think, 70 yards on the entire season on the ground. But part of what Michigan can do is run to set up, pass, and to sort of balance your tendencies. So I don't see this being a big Hassan Haskins game. I think Blake Corum could still do a few things on the edges, but I think you also throw some passes that are essentially runs. You can get it to Corum out of the backfield. You can also utilize Roman Wilson. You can utilize AJ Henning through runs on the ends too. So it's not going to be a traditional running game, but I'm also really not looking forward to the first time Michigan runs the ball and Michigan Twitter like flips out because they want it to be a 95-5 pass run split. So yes, if Michigan wins, it's going to be because of its passing game, but you can't just tell your running backs room, okay, you guys are setting this one out. We're gonna go air raid this game, because that's not Michigan's strength, and you can't necessarily let Wisconsin completely dictate how this game's going to be played either.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the rational takes on the message board during this Wisconsin game. I don't know if Scott Bell's incognito on the message board, but I'm sure he's seen plenty of the reactions that happen on there all the time, even on Twitter. And Michigan fans are pretty spoiled.
So yeah, I lurk occasionally on message boards, but I'm not hopping in and joining in on the fun. I get enough of that nonsense on Twitter. So no thanks.
Too much trolling on there.
Yeah, I think one of the big fallacies that Michigan fans believe in, my favorite one is when the offense is going well, it's Josh Gaddis, and when it's going poorly, it's Jim Harbaugh calling plays. But I think the one this week that's been the most glaring and most obvious of like kind of hot takey, I guess, is, pass equals good, run equals bad. And I agree with Scott completely. You can't just throw, by me saying Cade throw a little bit, throw more than he has, that means like in the 20s still from an attempt standpoint. Just throwing the ball for the sake of, the run game didn't work last week. Like that's not it. That's not their identity. That's not what the passing game might be bad. We don't really know that. That's kind of the little unknown with not throwing the ball kind of at a service academy level. It may not be very good. And maybe that's why they're not throwing the ball.
Yeah. I actually think the run game can actually be pretty successful this week against Wisconsin. They haven't faced guys like AJ Henning, Roman Wilson, other than Blake Corum, obviously, guys with speed that are able to get to you on the edge. And Michigan didn't really display that last week. So we need to see more of that from Michigan on offense this week.
I am interested to see if we maybe see a little more 21 personnel than we've deployed this year. get Corum, and I mean we all know Haskins and Corum are two of the best options we have on offense, two of the best players on the team. Get them both involved. And, I don't know if it was a true read, but I think we all remember the opening play of the season last year where we hit Corum in a little swing route against Minnesota, went for a good chunk. So, set up like easy RPOs and put, some of Wisconsin's best players on defense are the edge defenders. Put them in conflict, get both Haskins and Corum involved. You can do that with wide receivers too, with just out of 11 personnel, orbit motion or whatever. But, get creative with turning, like Scott mentioned, turning some of the run game into really just short passing game, whether it's screens, whether it's, a screen tagged on as an RPO. But I'd love to see us test the edges, like you guys have mentioned, and do so by putting some of the better Wisconsin linebackers in conflict. I think Henningsen is the best player on their D line, the one defensive end. I think Benton's good. I think he's fine, but I think Henningsen is the dude that I'm running away from Henningsen on the D line.
And he was like early in his career, he was kind of the guy you picked on. I believe he was a walk-on. I think he was a former walk-on.
I think so. Was he the 2018 game where I think we ran for 300 yards against Wisconsin? Was he the sub? Okay, yeah. So he was in that game for whoever, Isaiah Loudermilk or whoever.
Yeah, Loudermilk was a dude. That guy was awesome.
He got drafted last year, right? He's not on the team anymore.
He's on the Steelers.
Steelers, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to be Cam Hayward's replacement.
Gotcha. So, Con, you're saying that you don't want to see the two quarterback play that we ran with Shea and McCaffrey a couple of years back?
Please no. I could tell you what, I wouldn't hate seeing Dan Villari this week. Maybe a little goal line.
Some Taysom Hill action.
Yeah, sure. Why not? He got.
Jim teased it before the season, so maybe we could see some of that.
They ran it against Western, right? Western Illinois.
I think it was a two-point conversion play.
Oh, the 2-point conversion. Yeah.
Did not work out well, but it's a small sample size.
Yeah,
right.
It'll be interesting to see the Alabama bowl game. I can't remember which bowl it was. It really doesn't matter. But that was the last kind of stout 3-man front that they faced other than Wisconsin every season. And they, as Con was suggesting, they really put them in conflict on the edge a lot. Can't remember the safety's name, but they were picking on him all day. That was probably one of Josh Gaddis's best called games. And you could see a similar type game plan against Wisconsin. They're very similar structurally on defense to Alabama. Alabama does kind of their pattern matching. It seems simplistic, but their Rip and Liz, we seem to know their checks quite a bit and caught them in space quite a bit in that game. It'd be interesting to see if we see kind of a game plan like that.
Mm-hmm. Scott, what do you say to those Michigan fans that after last week's game, they were going crazy? Even though they won, it was a tough game, it seemed like, for every college team in week 4. What do you say to those fans that were like, oh, yeah, this is a Harbaugh offense, this isn't a Gaddis offense? Like, what do you say to those fans?
I always think that's annoying, kind of a very lazy take. I think Matt was saying that too, that's just kind of, it's almost a meme at this point. And it's not fair. But at the same time, the head coach is probably going to get the brunt of the criticism, and I get that. But it's definitely annoying that's how it's spread out. In terms of how I was reacting to it, I was pretty week 2 Washington. I was super annoyed by the fact that it seemed like a huge chunk of the fan base was like up in arms that Michigan was running the ball in a big win against a Washington team that struggled early, but that's still a good defense. So I was sort of being fan police that week, being like, guys, come on. But I will say last week in the moment, in the second half, I shared a lot of the concerns that other people had. Now, when you take a step back and look, okay, those 4 3-and-outs in the second half, that's 12 plays. And it wasn't good, but is that a big enough sample to really be worried about? And I've calmed down a little bit because of that. And I'm hoping, or at least telling myself as a coping mechanism, that maybe it's good that happened in the second half of the Rutgers game, and you give this team a week to sort of prepare that, because if Michigan just cruised against Rutgers and Wisconsin did what Rutgers did in the second half, I would much rather this team and this coaching staff have a week to prepare, coming off the heels of a rough second half against Rutgers, than having to make in-game adjustments against Wisconsin, because I do not think that would have fared very well. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise, but I was very much in lockstep with a lot of people that were concerned, at least in real time, during the second half of the Rutgers game.
It was concerning seeing what happened in the second half, but I feel a bit more confident heading into this game just because of the way the offenses looked in all the other games. I really love the way they looked against Washington. Washington does have a really good defense, and their pass defense is arguably one of the best in the nation. I wouldn't say the best, but they're definitely one of the best in the nation. They got a great secondary. So I'm a lot more confident about Michigan's offense as opposed to other years. I think a lot of the players that they have on there, a lot of the schemes and stuff, like I think they've looked the best that they have since 2016. I think that's the best offense that Michigan's ever had, was in 2016. Harbaugh's second year here. So what about you, Matt? Like, are you feeling confident about Michigan's offense heading into this week?
I am more. I agree with you. I'm more so than in the past. I think that second half is going to prove a little bit to be kind of a perfect storm. No rhythm. Defense is on the field all game, all half. Excuse me. Offense gets back out there. One miscue, and all of a sudden the drive is off schedule. We'll see. I think the offensive line actually this year has much better potential to hold up against a team like a Wisconsin that's got a good group in the front seven. I think just in general with the offense, it's always going to be under the kind of, Gaddis kind of is who he is at this point. It's going to be hot and cold from game to game, quarter to quarter. Flow and rhythm has seemed to be more so than even just like general play calling. Flow and rhythm have seemed to be something that hasn't been great under him. And that's kind of been the theme, I suppose, throughout the last few seasons. They have, in the years that they've been good, they have turned it on in the big games. 2018, they had some pretty ugly games. And then, you play Wisconsin, you play Penn State, and they played pretty well offensively. I do think, like, kind of big picture on like this Saturday's game, there's two things, from a momentum standpoint that could happen. Wisconsin is in kind of that backs against the wall type situation. And they could come out, their hair on fire, and Michigan turns it over, and it's, like all the road woes have been since Harbaugh's been there. Or there's also potential, and I'm not suggesting they're going to make a quarterback change, but when you got a quarterback that's got 1 touchdown and 7 interceptions and a defense that's given up 23 rushing yards a game, if Michigan goes down the field and kind of shreds them on one drive and then gets a quick stop or maybe even a turnover, I'm not suggesting a full-on revolt. There could be some quit in Wisconsin on Saturday. The season has not gone as many projected for them. I mean, if you guys remember preseason, we were talking about this game like outside of Ohio State. Yeah, chalk it up as a loss. Like outside of Ohio State, like this is the second biggest measuring stick game. 3 weeks in so far. And from a Michigan side, it still feels like a measuring stick game. But
yeah,
from Wisconsin side of things, it's kind of like they got to reassess what they're doing on offense.
This is their season.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, going 1-3 heading into the rest of the Big Ten schedule that they've got. I mean, who knows what their season will look like if they lose this game.
Yeah. Right. I mentioned preseason. I think Wisconsin as a program, they rely a lot on their own inertia. I think, you look at the seasons where they've lost multiple games or where they've been, out of contention for the West, and they seem to fold or at least grow more, mortal as the season goes on after they get multiple losses. The 2018 season, I think they ended up with 5 losses, and they lost to some programs that, most people would consider beneath Wisconsin that year. I believe they had a game against Purdue that they ended up winning, but went to like triple overtime. I do think they're going to come out and give it everything they have, because like you guys said, this is a third loss and they're done, and crowds will get a little thinner, and they might look at a quarterback change. But 10-2 Wisconsin is still a great year for them. So they're going to give it everything they have. I have a tiny like third party connection to their defense. Scotty Nelson, the safety, I know someone who played with his brother, and they're still very confident in their defense. I think the defense is ready for,
as they should be.
Michigan. Yeah,
their defense is really good, but their offense is a whole nother story.
But yeah, and they said, that's the one thing, can the offense back it up? So, I think it's a lot of what I mentioned earlier. Can Michigan kind of, answer the call early, and maybe if you get a lucky bounce, a wet ball, maybe you get a special teams play, Quorum or Henning on a return, maybe the wind leaves the sail at some point in the game, and maybe Wisconsin folds like we've seen some of the Wisconsin teams that have multiple losses do.
So now we're heading into our final segment of the podcast. This is our prize picks rapid fire picks that we're going to have. These are over unders that are brought to you by our sponsor, Prize Picks. So we'll start with our passing yards of 185.5 from Cade on Saturday. Over or under, Scott, I'm going to start with you.
I will take over on that. Probably not much, but I do think the key is through the passing game, and even if some of those are cheap passing yards like extended handoffs and just quick passes, I do think you're going to have to utilize the passing game to stay away from the middle of that defense. So sorry, not very rapid fire because I have a tendency to ramble, but I will take over.
Look, we do it every week. I always say rapid fire, and then we always get into an excerpt. So, Contown, go ahead. 185.5 from McNamara.
Scott, I'm a lawyer, so I've never said anything rapid fire or efficiently in my life. I'll go over. Same reason as Scott. Cade had, I think, 160 yards in the first half against Rutgers, and I think it's going to be more deliberate with the passing game this week. So I'll go over.
Matt?
Yep. Over. Rapid.
I'm gonna go under. Might sound like a surprise, but I'm gonna go under. I'm actually a little bit more confident in the running game than I think most people will be heading into this game. So that takes us into the rushing yards. Kind of steep. I'm not gonna lie. 82.5 for Blake Corum. Over under.
Easily take under. I love Blake Corum. Respect him a lot. I think his all-purpose yards, I'll take over that. I'll take that without his kick return yards, but that's more yardage for Corum than Wisconsin's entire team has allowed through 3 weeks. So I will jump all over the under.
I have to say under too, for the same reason. I'm actually tempted to say over. I just feel like Blake had a down game for his standards last week, and I could see him breaking one big run that kind of takes that over. It's not going to be a steady dose of Blake and go over at 5 yards per carry, but I could see one happening and get over. But I'll play it safe and say under.
Yeah, I'm going to go under too. That's the only way he gets over at, I think, is with one big one, 40 plus. So yeah, I'll go under.
I'm in agreement with Contown. I'm gonna go over, but less than 100. So like 90.
Hold on, I said 90. I wanted to go over, but I'm going under.
Oh, you wanted to go over. Excuse me. You're going under. Oh God, I'm pulling you over to the dark side.
Pull me with it. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll be the one with the guts here, and I'm gonna go over 82.5. So Hassan Haskins 67.5. Over under.
Under. I don't think this is a game that sets up well to Haskins' strength. I think Michigan's done a good job of utilizing different players according to their game plan or whatever, but I think this is a Corum heavy game, and I don't think Haskins gets enough carries to really flirt with that number, and I don't think he's going to be particularly effective when he does get the ball.
Under. Same reason as Blake, but I don't think he has Blake's big playability, so I'm not really even tempted to go over.
So they have Michigan projected 150 yards rushing over under, like as a team.
They do.
That seems high. Yeah, I'm going under on Haskins too, for the reasons mentioned. I would be shocked if Michigan gets over 150 yards rushing. Chalk it up. That's a W.
I'm gonna go under as well. I think we're gonna see a ton of Corum. I think we're actually gonna see more Henning and Wilson in the running game rather than Haskins. I just, like Scott has alluded to, this is just not a Haskins game whatsoever. So I'm going to go under on that. One last over-under before we get into our score predictions. Chez Mellusi for Wisconsin, 79.5 over-under.
I will give him over. I think it was mentioned earlier, but I was pretty high on Jalen Berger heading into this year. I thought he was pretty impressive as a freshman, but the fact that Malusi's been able to wrangle not just some snaps from him, but just the complete lion's shares of snaps for Wisconsin, I see him getting over 20 carries, and even if Michigan can limit him to 4 yards a carry, that's still putting him over. So I will go over on that.
I'll go over as well. I think it'll be inefficient, but he did go over 100 yards against Penn State in that loss. Yeah, I think he's a good back, and they're still a decent offensive line. So I'll go over. Not super efficient for him, but I think they'll force the run a little bit.
Yeah, over as well. The only way I'd go under is if they were rotating more. But watching that Notre Dame game, Berger was barely ever out there. He'd come out for one play and then back to the sideline. So, yeah, I'll go over.
I think Guarendo is actually the second.
Yeah, he is. Berger's only gotten like 16 carries this entire season.
Yeah, they use how did you pronounce his name? Guarendo?
Yeah.
They use him similar to how they used 37 Groshek. Yep. Yeah, he's kind of their third down guy, pass blocking guy. They can catch the ball out of the backfield, but they don't seem to turn around and hand it to him as nearly as much as Mellusi. So
yeah, I'm going to go over as well. I think those will be the only yards that they really get on offense this entire game. So like 100 yards, but maybe like 3 yards a carry or something. They'll just keep pounding the rock with Mellusi. So that gives us the score predictions for this week. We'll let our guest Scott go first. Scott, what's your prediction for this game? What happens?
I like the under. I have a pretty bad track record picking Michigan in big games, picking them to win. So I might be a little on the superstitious side, but I will say on paper, I actually feel better and better about Michigan's matchup as it goes on. But until Michigan shows it can win a big game on the road, I'm going to say Wisconsin 21, Michigan 20.
Oh God, that would. You know how grueling that would be, Scott? I
would love to be wrong. I would love for everyone to tell me how much of an idiot I am for picking against Michigan. But I'm trying to do everyone a favor here.
The message boards will go fucking crazy if it's 21-20.
Ooh, Scott, I've got this is probably a weird time to do it, but I've got a big picture Wisconsin question since you're talking past picks and stuff. So Wisconsin in general as a program, them and Iowa, I would argue, have the opposite of an identity crisis. I think those are the two most self-aware programs in the country. That can be good and that can be bad. For Wisconsin recently, that's been very, very good. My thought is, and I think Michigan sometimes does struggle, whether it's play calling, scheme, recruiting, does struggle with an identity crisis at times. I think too often us fans think we're Ohio State, and currently Michigan is not Ohio State. What do you think about in terms of like program building in general? I think Harbaugh recently, I think, it's been well documented. I'm pretty sure you've done quite a bit on the 2017 class being such a star-studded class and being a huge flop. What do you think in general, like recently Michigan has done from a program building standpoint? We're seeing a lot of young guys on the field. It seems like he's got back to, I'm not suggesting they recruit all 3 stars, but I think Michigan can be in a fine middle ground of Wisconsin and Ohio State, like be in between those two and build a very successful program. What are your thoughts overall on program building?
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what you said. I don't think Michigan fans would ever be okay with doing what Wisconsin and Iowa have done, just based on the reaction to like the Wisconsin or the Washington game when Michigan played an incredibly efficient, like great game in a primetime setting, and people were upset because of the style in which they did it. So, but in terms of the 3 stars and getting people that fit your system or your philosophy, I totally agree. And I think Michigan has a pretty good track record with a lot of those 3-star project types who elite programs may not normally go for. I do think it's really important to have have a few stars at the top of your class. You do need an elite talent. I mean, I think the numbers bear that out, and you need to have some classes with Will Johnsons, with Dax Hills, with even like Chris Hinton's and JJ McCarthy's and Donovan Edwards, people like that. You need those type of people, but I'm long past the time of beating my fists against the wall because this guy has 3 stars instead of 4 stars. And I think I feel as if the coaching staff is putting more time into truly thinking out fits and checking tape and thinking about how he may project. So if Michigan is offering some guy that's even a lowish 3-star, 1,100 in the nation overall, over someone that may be a 4-star top 400 or so that's also interested, if they have that other player interested in them, like I respect and trust the fact that the coaching staff is willing to give that spot to that lower ranked player, because they may be doing it because of his ceiling or because of his fit or because of off the field things that the people doing these star ratings for these websites may not know yet. So I'm all for it. And I think for a program to grow and to make that next step, you need to have coaches that are confident enough to make those calls because they know they may be unpopular, but also a head coach that gives his assistants the autonomy to sort of make those calls as well.
Yeah, we're more on that Auburn level rather than that Ohio State, Alabama level, right around there. I mean, even Penn State under James Franklin. I think outside of James Franklin, they're not the greatest recruitment team. But yeah, I think Michigan fans' expectations are insane, from recruiting all the way to season outlook. I mean, it's just absolutely wild. We were doing score predictions, right?
Yeah.
Matt, go ahead with your score prediction.
I feel like this is way too overconfident, but this is what I've kind of felt all week. I think Michigan wins in like I'll say 24-14. I think Wisconsin is going to be under 20, and I just think Michigan is good enough offensively to get 3 score, at least 3 touchdowns. I don't think they're going to light up the scoreboard, but I'll go 24-14, Michigan.
What about you, Con?
So I promise I'm not trying to kiss up to Scott, but 21-20 is actually a number that I've had in my head. And the reason for that is similar to Scott's reasoning. If these were 2 nameless teams, stat columns on a piece of paper, I'd probably pick Michigan to win something like 24-17, 24-14, like Matt said. Michigan on paper is the better team. They have better pieces, I think, than Wisconsin in the important areas. Every advanced metric likes Michigan. Even SP Plus is close, but they like Michigan to win by 1. So on paper, Michigan should win this game. But Madison's a tough place to play. It's going to kind of be a dying animal back against the wall, whatever cliche you want to use. It's going to be Wisconsin's last breath of the season, to make this a worthwhile season for them. So can Michigan go in a place where historically they haven't, won a ton, at least recent history, and deliver the knockout punch to a team with its back against the wall? I don't think I've seen a Harbaugh team do that yet. So for my own emotions, I'm going to tell myself it's going to be a loss before I go to Madison. I'll say this. I think if you time traveler from the future came and told me this game wasn't close, I think I would tell you Michigan won. I don't see a Wisconsin blowout. If this game gets out of hand, I think it's going to be in Michigan's favor. I think Michigan is the only team that has the ability to do that of these 2. But I'll say Wisconsin close until I see otherwise. 21-20.
I'm so disappointed. I'm gonna split it right up the middle. I'm gonna go 17-13 Michigan. I just think it's gonna be an absolute grueling game. It's gonna make you want to rip your hair out, roll your eyes, yell at the TV, throw some things, whatever you got to do to get that anger out. At the end of the day, I think Michigan will get that win. It'll make some fans happy. It'll make some fans disappointed because they think that Michigan can go out there and score 40 points a game, no matter who they play. But a win's a win in my book, and especially against a team like Wisconsin on the road, who we haven't beaten since God, is it like
21.
2021 or 2001? We haven't
Yep.
beaten them in Madison. So, I mean, 20 years. I think they do it. This is a team that likes to play for each other. Different mentality heading into the year. Love just the focus that they've had. I think they just are better, talented, more talented. And I think the coaches have done an outstanding job on both sides of the ball, developing these players so quickly into the season. So I'm going to go 17-13 Michigan. And it's also about which quarterback do I trust more. And it's Cade right now. I'm not going to trust the quarterback with 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions until he shows us. So
This is pure coincidence, and I'm not a numerology guy, but the last time Wisconsin started 1-2 was 2001, which is the last time they won a game in Madison. So,
Nice.
So they're going to win 40-7. Wisconsin is on Saturday, just because we're doing all this.
yeah, well, yeah, that's all right.
John Navarre was the quarterback the last time. God.
Who? John Navarre?
Yeah. It's been a long time.
An
Jesus.
underrated quarterback in Michigan history.
Absolutely, but it's still been a long time.
Yeah.
Never watched him play. First quarterback I ever saw play was Chad Henne. So
He holds all the records, including the record for passes thrown into the back of his offensive lineman's helmets.
that's a joke I don't get, but I don't have to research that. Scott, any parting shots before we leave?
I don't think so. Looking forward to it. Appreciate y'all having me on, and I look forward to following y'all throughout the season as well.
Yeah. Where can they find you on Twitter if they're not already following you?
I am at sbell021 on Twitter, and my newsletter is scottbell.substack.com, or you can just Google Scott Bell newsletter, and I think it's the first thing that comes up.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, for coming on here. And that does it for this episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Harder. Today with me was Scott Bell, Contown, and Matt. Everyone have a great day, great weekend. And as always, go blue.